Hi everyone, this is Niharika from Your Legal Career Coach. We are a mentorship platform for law students, and on our YouTube channel, you will find interviews with students and industry professionals which will make your journey easier. Today, we have with us Laksh Kawatra. Laksh graduated from National University of Juridical Sciences, Kolkata in 2024 and is a future trainee solicitor at Herbert Smith Freehills. In this session, he will talk about the vacation scheme at the Herbert Smith Freehills. Welcome, Laksh. I request you to please introduce yourself to our audience, after which we can begin with the session. Over to you.
Hi, Neharika. Thank you so much for the invitation to YLCC. Uh, just as you said, I'm a graduate from NUJS 2024 batch, recently graduated. I am from Northern India in Uttar Pradesh, born and brought up in Allahabad. And I did my schooling from here and then college in Calcutta. And now I'm going to be moving for my job to London in March next year. So, yeah, been some healthy traveling in the mix so far. And yeah, excited for this session. I hope I can be helpful to anyone who's interested out there.
Right. So let us start off by knowing your motivation for applying for the vacation scheme. So please.
Surely. Um, so when you ask about my motivation for, let's say, applying for a vacation scheme, I think there were a lot of things which I had to consider. I think there are primarily two questions which come up, right? And this is something which we also look in while we're preparing for certain rounds, right? One is, why do you want to work at a city law firm, right? Which is essentially Herbert Smith Freehills, Allen Overy, Linkletters, Clifford Chance, and so many others, right? And second, I think, is what specifically attracted me towards Herbert Smith Freehills, right? So I'll be trying to cover both of them wherever the specificities come in. Now, the first thing is, throughout my law school, one thing which really interested me from the get go was ADR. And what it led me to do is I participated in a lot of competitions of international nature. I met a lot of judges, a lot of my peers from around the world. And that led to some really interesting developments in terms of the sort of work assignments I had, a few internships I had. And it gave me an international exposure and the kind of connections I developed. I learned about the work culture of different places. And I realized, oh, there is so much more which we can explore, within, let's say, corporate law. And as a first year, it's great to know about that, right? In terms of the different kinds of niches which are there. So I always had this mind that, oh, I want to do something which is, spread out over an international exposure, in the sense I get to make connections at a global level, right? I do work which is top level or concerns a lot of people, right? And let's say different kinds of niche, right? Let's say work related to climate change, related to energy, related to particular subsets of emerging technology, right? And this is something which can, I would not say only be present on a global scale. Of course, it's present in India also for sure, and it's really growing at a great rate, one of the fastest rates, sure. But I feel the exposure which you, let's say, get in a niche field, right, with, let's say, a city law firm, that's a great thing to kickstart your career. Now, that's one thing. That was the preliminary idea of what will this introduce me to. Second thing, I am not someone who is very, what you would call, sure in terms of what I exactly want to do in terms of my, like, do. And you might have come across people such as, oh, I'm sure I want to do arbitration, right? Or, oh, I'm sure I want to do litigation, or I want to work in TMT. But I did a couple of internships with law firms. I did a couple of internships with policy houses, right? I did internships with think tanks. And I realized that, sure, I'm interested in the commercial side of the law, right? But I'm not sure what exactly do I want to work in. And this is back in, when I was starting to think, okay, what do I want to do as I move ahead in my third year? And I had heard about vacation schemes before, but I think one of my seniors, and this was during a negotiation practice only, they reminded me, that what exactly is the structure of a vacation scheme, right? Specifically at Herbert Smith Freehills, what you get is you get to work in 4 different seats over a period of 6 months each, right? And that sounded really impressive to me, in the sense that, sure, I can explore different areas of my interest, while figuring out towards the end of those 2 years, what do I actually want to qualify in. And this is something I also heard from a lot of seniors and professionals in the field, that when we came and we started working, we were very sure that we wanted to do this one particular thing, right? But we realize there is much more to work rather than the subject matter. There's also a lifestyle associated with a certain kind of field. I remember having a conversation during the vacation scheme only with one of my seniors there, who told me that when they came to the firm, they were like, I want to do arbitration for short. And like international commercial arbitration is something I want to pursue. But as they went along, they realized the lifestyle and the kind of requirements and expectations of that particular team were not suitable to her as a person per se. And let's say TMT, which they ended up choosing, is more suitable because, let's say, sort of dynamism which is involved in it, right? And this is something which really motivated me, right? I don't want to take a call of what I want to do before I've actually experienced it. Bridging that gap between liking something and working in it to finalizing whether you want to work in it for a good period of time in your life. So I think that was a big thing. Now, HSF specifically here really uh, was great because when I was doing my research at that point of time, and even today, there's this chamber partners ranking which you must have heard of.
Mm.
HSF had the highest number of ranked practice areas. But that means you've got arbitration, you've got corporate, you have private equity, you've got ESG, you even had alternative legal services, TMT, everything. And this is the firm which has the maximum number of ranked practice areas at that point of time. I'm like, great, everything is good, everything is top level. So obviously it was the right choice for me.
Right.
And think apart from that, the other things are a mix of, I mean, sort of some sort of stories we hear from our seniors when you're in law school in terms of work culture, what it's like, the long hours and everything. And as I've graduated and some of my friends have started working, I feel uh, they're doing well and they're liking their work. But what I figured, the bigger issue in terms of work is not that much about the long hours or the breadth of the work as much as it is about, let's say, training, right? Or as much as it's about guidance or acknowledgement or, let's say, an understanding of your time, right? And I'm not saying that this is not present here, right? In India, for sure it is at so many places, right? uh, but what I learned from some of my seniors who are already working as trainee solicitors in HSS specifically and in other firms also, that sort of work environment is more culture towards that. There's a more general respect for time in terms of, and there's a very solid training driven program where for those 2 years you're trained to ensure that you know everything. Even when I was there during the vacation scheme, and there's something which I really like. For sure, they expected you to be quick. They expected you to adapt. They expected you to learn while on the job, but they did not presuppose any kind of knowledge that you should definitely have, right? For example, if you're going to work in a seat in an internship, right, you would think, oh, let me read up about this, right? And you would read up about it and be sure that, okay. And that's something which I also did. But when I went to the internship, there was a lot of, let's say, to a certain extent, I would not say hand holding, but guidance in terms of, okay, this is how you do it for the first time. And that is something I value a lot at the start of my career because, again, the roots need to be really strong.
Right.
So I think that is really important. And mostly apart from that, when, I mean, this sounds a little funny now, but when I saw the HSI website, I was going through the entire, I think they had an ambitions 2025 plan there where they talked about what is the main important things. And they talk about like people and the work culture is what drives us as a firm. And I saw through across of videos across the website, that is what really motivated me. Like, oh, they really value their people a lot. And you sure want that. And that thing, that was the clicking point for me, that okay, I would really want to do it. But yeah, so that's broadly it.
Right. So now moving to a more technical question, could you tell us about the any prerequisites or the eligibility criteria for the vacation scheme?
Right. So in terms of prerequisite, the only thing is, so just to get the idea clear, so there's a difference between, let's say, the general vacation schemes and the India internship vacation schemes, right? Now there are three firms who've been doing this for quite some time now: Herbert Smith Freehills, Linkletters, and Allen and Overy. They open their India internship programs, right? Through which they select students from across Indian law schools, right? They should be in their penultimate year of law school, That is fourth year of law school. And then the general vacation scheme, they have different ideas. It sometimes it's penultimate, sometimes it's open for final years, right? Sometimes it's open for people who have just graduated also. And just to get a some sort of clarity, because this is something where people also trip upon, there's a difference between a vacation scheme and a training contract. The training contract is what you get after completing the vacation scheme. That's a job offer. And a vacation scheme is essentially an assessment internship.
Right.
So, having made that clear, I think the prerequisite is just that you should be in your fourth year of law school.
Right.
Apart from that, there is no prerequisite otherwise. And one thing I would really want to say is that a lot of people are dissuaded from applying for the vacation scheme because they think that, oh, this is just for the top 10 ranks, right? Or the top five ranks. You need to have a great academic record. For sure, academics is important. Your understanding of law is really important. But this is a myth, right? And I've seen plenty of people who have been beyond that 1 to 10 benchmark and who have made across to a lot of these firms, right? So the idea is, if you have interesting experiences throughout your law school journey or before, you're motivated, you have clarity and a reason why you want to work at the firm, and a decent academic rank, right? When I say decent, let's say you should at least try and aim to be within, let's say, the top 20, 25, or 30 of your batch, depending on your batch size also, right? I think you are good to go. Everyone is equal in terms of that, because you can always cover up for that in other areas.
Right, right. So can you break down the application process for the same? And also, if you could tell us what should candidates particularly focus on at on every stage?
Right. So there are four rounds of application procedure, right? Now, the first thing which you'll start doing, but this is actually the second round, I'll explain how. The first thing you'll start doing is the application pro forma, which you'll fill up, right? Which is, you'll find on HSF's website, on Early Careers website. This is specific to HSF, and this is also similar to how other firms also, operate. But I'll be really specific with HSF here in terms of procedure. Okay, that's all right, I hope. Now, in terms of, you first fill the application, it will have your basic details, where you done your schooling from, your college, your grades, and then it will have two more sections. One is about your work experience, which includes all your internships, things you've done in law school in terms of organizational events, and things prior to school also you can put from class 12th and 11th. That's also there, right? You get a 15, 20 experiences which you can put. Then you got three essay type questions which you need to answer, right? So that's the application. You can also indicate, there are also columns for if there's any kind of accommodation, reasonable accommodation which you would be requiring, which you can fill for that. That is taken care of as well. Now that's the second stage. So what will happen is, after you've submitted this application, you'll get a SJT, which is a situational judgment test. It's a psychometric evaluation. The idea is to gauge, does your mindset is, falls similar to the mindset which the firm has, essentially the firm culture. Are your values aligned or not, right? If you pass that test, if you pass the benchmark on that test, stage one, then your application gets assessed in the first place. That is stage two. Now, if your application is assessed and you make it through, then you get to the third round, which is the telephonic interview. A telephonic interview is basically what you would call an HR interview, right? Uh, Essentially, you would have members of the graduate recruitment team who would be talking to you about your motivations. Why do you want to join, right? Strengths, weaknesses, and also competency based questions. Let's say perhaps there's a particular skill, right? Let's say leadership. So they would ask you, okay, where do you think you have portrayed leadership? Where do you think you've demonstrated skills? Things like this. This is a competency interview. If you pass the competency interview, there's a third stage, you move on to the fourth and the final stage, right? Which is the assessment center, which happens offline. This happens offline. Two partners fly in for this. You go to wherever it is happening. It depends on which college you're in, and they would call you accordingly, which is the nearest location for you, right? Usually that's the case. They fund your travel and your accommodation expenses. That is taken care of. Now, in that, there are two rounds which happen. One is a longer 40-45 minute competency interview with one partner, right? Which is essentially a more detailed, analytical, and conversational version of the previous telephonic interview, right? There's some back and forth happening, right? The idea is to dig deeper into the person you are, and why do you want to come, join the firm, and what do you bring to the table, right? The second is a technical interview called the case study interview. Now, herein, what you get a booklet, which is basically a fact scenario, and you get 45 minutes to prepare with the booklet. And in the end of the booklet, there are around 4 to 6 questions mentioned, right? Now, what happens with these 4 to 6 questions? The role play exercise which happens, the partner will play the role of a client, and you have to play the role of a solicitor at HSF, and you have to help them through all these different questions. Therein, you're text tested on, let's say, your attention to detail, your ability to handle client queries, right? Your ability to summarize and present everything with clarity in an organized manner. Also, back and forth there in terms of how you're handling yourself. So that's what happens. So this is the basic structure. Let me know if you want me to, go deep in terms of preparation for that. But broadly, this is the structure. What happens?
Right, right. Please go ahead with the preparation. What would you recommend? Maybe you can
Right.
talk about the resources or what all you use to prepare for the same.
Yeah, I think that will be great. So in terms of preparation, I would say so each round has some sort of different preparation to some extent, right? I'll try to put it out briefly, and I'll try to tag it with the resources what I used. So the first is the application stage. I think the most important thing apart from your basic details is the work experience section, right? And the section with three essay type questions. The essay type questions change sometimes from year to year. For some years, they've remained mostly mostly constant. One is tell us something which you're interested about, and introduce us to something which you're interested in. Why is it interesting for you? That's question one. Second is why do you want to join Herbert Smith Freehills? And third is what qualities and skills do you bring to the role? These are three essay type questions. I think these are extremely important in the sense because this is the part where you'll be putting out your personality, right? And this is what you're also being assessed on apart from your work experience also. So I think what is important here is to first learn, okay, how to write these answers, right? And for that, I will, you know, really recommend the Corporate Law Academy, TCLA, right? That's an excellent resource, right? It talks about what kind of mindset do you need to have when you're writing these questions. What do you need to pay attention on, right? And how do you go about, figuring out different answer writing styles? What do you want to put, right? Because it's complex in the sense that all of these questions have word limits, 300 words each, right? And what people do seldom times, I think, while I've helped some of my juniors and other people who have asked for checking their application just to go through it, and what I've observed is some mistakes people make is that, what they'll write about, I really want to join because the arbitration practice is really great, and yeah, really I've enjoyed arbitration, I've done this moot, and your recent case talks about this, and this is really interesting, I want to do it. And that's great, sounds awesome, no issues, but that doesn't put you up outright. That
Right.
doesn't make you stand apart. The essence. Now again, I would advise go ahead, use TCLA. They'll teach you. They know their stuff for sure. But to get the essence out of, in let's say a line or two, is you have to tell about a reason why you want to, why you want to join the firm professionally, along with a personal reason why it relates to you personally as a person, as an individual. Why does it relate to you? Why this particular HSF doing so well in arbitration matters to you, right?
Mm.
And then link it back to an experience in your life, and then give the answer. So it's
Mm.
well rounded. It's both personal and professional. That's the basic idea. So that's there. And again, TCL is very helpful. And TCL, especially Forum, is one resource which is basically a discussion group. There are many threads on it which talks about everything, right from what you should wear to your assessment center, to what you should be doing on your vacation scheme, to what you should focus while writing answers, right? There are also a lot of courses on TCLA which are free and some are paid. For paid courses, if you can afford it, I would say you should go ahead. One advice I would give is, let's say, the couple of people who are interested in applying for vacation schemes, a lot of them come through both India internship scheme and otherwise. What you can do is you can pool in and buy it together. That's something which I also did, and it came
Mm.
out relatively inexpensive. So that. So in terms of answer writing, be very sure in terms of what your, especially for YHSF, what your reasons are, both personally, professionally, and need to maintain a link between the two. So you can carve out a story effectively there. I think for the first question, which is something you're interested about, the idea is people write something about something legal, right, or something related to law, but that's something just specifically said we want to know about you. So something you're genuinely interested in, something you feel, oh, this is unique, and something which, let's say, you have a very specific perspective of, and uh, you can talk about it in the interview also. Why I say this, because what happened, so I wrote my first answer for HSF on this on time travel. Time travel is something really interests me. And I remember my assessment center, uh, Mr. Chris Parsons was there taking my assessment center. And I remember sitting with him, and there was quite some time spent on, understanding the theory of relativity, special relativity, and time dilation, how everything works. If I had just what we call in law school faffed that, I would be done and dusted. And
Definitely.
you want to avoid that. That you want to talk about a topic which you are like surely know inside out.
Right.
So that, and the third skill I think is, one thing I would say is, don't just talk about your moods or don't just talk about your ADR experiences, right? If you can bring out experience, unique skills which you've learned from everyday experiences, that's even more valuable to them, because it makes you stand out, right? Something you did while, let's say, helping your parents in a business
Hmm.
or in house, or something you did in a part-time job or in a community, that's much much more solid, because it shows your personal skills which are gained from your life every day, right? So that uniqueness needs to come in those experiences, right? And the biggest idea behind these questions is, don't write to impress, write to convey, right? In the sense that nobody, for sure, it's very important. Let me rephrase it in a politer way. uh, you might have won a moot, or you might have just participated in a moot. Not so much emphasis is laid on which mood was it, whether you won it or you participated. Emphasis is laid on what you learned there, how did you follow it up, how is it a part of your life now, and how do you apply it, in your daily life and moving forward. So just, I think one thing which really helped me through this was the why thing, which we do in debating. You ask yourself a question, you get the next answer, why, and so on. So yeah, enough about the application. Go to TCLA, check it out. Really helpful. But yeah, this is my bit on the application. That's the first stage. Second stage is the psychometric evaluation. For that, I think just go to the website, right? Thoroughly check out what is HSF about, right? What is, go to all the websites the firm has, right? An early careers website, a graduate recruitment website. For HSF, fortunately, there was a small test also on the earlier careers website, which helped me gauge. One important tip for this, which I really follow, which I followed and I recommend also, is that remember, you don't need to answer what in the SJT what makes you look good. The idea is to answer what is the most practical and efficient way which utilizes the firm's resources and time effectively. So that is the idea. A reasonable person, not something like, oh, I want to look best. So for, let's say, if it's in question like, oh, you have a task at hand and someone's giving you another task. You want to read the context. You say, oh, you know what, I'll do all three tasks. You need to look at it, understand, okay, what's my bandwidth, because prioritization becomes really important in a workplace. So things like this. I mean, the third stage for the competencies, I think one single tip for that would be, the idea behind competencies, you need to know what are the skills you have learned and where have you learned from them. And this is something which I call the skills tree, which I make. What you do is you write out all the relevant skills. They're on the graduate recruitment website, and generally also, like, let's say, you're determined, you're disciplined, time management, attention to detail, leadership, organization, so on. You write them all down, right? And then what you do is you start from your class 11th till whatever your third year of law school you'll be in, and write down what all experiences you've had in terms of experiences, moods, ADR, organization, everything. You write them down, put them together on paper, both of them side by side, and see, okay, in this, what did I learn? In this, what did I learn? In this, what did I learn? And that gives you a very good linkage view. Okay, where did you get those skills from? This is something which can be carried forth to the next stage also in the competency interview for the assessment center. That is something which is great. For another thing with the competency interview in the assessment center, which you need to keep in mind, is commercial awareness. And that is something which, again, we all are learning, and it's a developing thing. It's not something which is done during a day, or just instantly you can just mug up a few things and you're sorted with it. The idea is to know what is happening in the world, how is it related to businesses, and also, okay, what is constantly being done, what are the advancements, how do politics affect everything, and so on and so forth. So for that, I would say, for commercial awareness, this is something you should be preparing from day one, if not day one, and then at least after you've done the telephonic interview. So there, I would say a few things you should definitely have a look at is, one is Vacations Daily, is this app and website which talks about what is relevant in terms of commercial arena. It is weekly, it's on a daily basis, on a monthly basis. There are also quizzes in there. That's really helpful. For financial news, you can look at, there's an app called Finimize, which talks about stock, not stock particularly, but generally about what's the financial landscape like. Uh, Very helpful is the FT News Briefing podcast. It is commercial awareness, varies from 9 to 15 minutes. Every day you hear that every day for 10, 15 days, you're sorted. You know what is happening in the world to a good extent. Now, why is it relevant? I'll come to that also, but let me just finish the resources. HSF podcast is also really helpful. One really important thing which I came across post my vacations, later stages, and that's something I felt, okay, if I come this earlier, would have made life a lot of easier. You can use YouTube as a great resource, right? So there are a lot of these creators on YouTube, right, who have done fantastic work, and one of them, Eden, he runs this newsletter called Little Law. Really fantastic newsletter. It And this is specifically targeted towards people who are sitting for vacation schemes. You go to Little Law, it'll tell you the week's news, what was relevant, how is it relevant for law firms, important news to different kind of news, right, and in different order of importance, right. And it has even sections that if you can't read the whole thing, just read this and you'll be sorted. So that's great. Eden, he's also on YouTube, so for sure check him out. One another creator is Simranjeet Kaur Mann. Extremely helpful. Their videos are really intuitive in terms of preparation, and yeah, that's a resource which you should for sure have a look at. Right. Now, why is this becomes important in terms of commercial awareness? Because when you're talking about competency things in your interview, there's sometimes question as, what's what's the last thing you read which you found interesting, right? Or there could be a policy question about, okay, what do you think about this problem which is happening? It's the electricity, the energy crisis, right, in UK. What do you think about this? And you might have no idea about it, right? So this is why it's important. And second, what it does is it gives you a platform, let's say, where I remember when I was interested particularly in TMT, and through my commercial awareness, I got to know the kind of work HSF was doing back there with Google in terms of data storage. And also what their, I think their Sydney team was doing in terms of green energy, which I found really exciting. And this work I read up due to commercial awareness. I read up HSF's proposal also and what they were proposing. And that's something which the interviewers really enjoyed. Okay, that you know your stuff properly, right? So that also counts. And the idea is also, if you want to work in commercial law, it's good to be acquainted with what's happening. It's a very useful skill also. So that, uh, coming to the technical part, and this is where a lot of study will go. I'll just list out the resources first, right? What are the resources? And I'll just tell mainly three areas you need to learn. Now, with terms to case study, how you attempt it, if you want, I can sort of explain in this interview. Otherwise, it's there in TCLA or in the forum and thread also. But I'll just start with the three basic areas. The basic areas you want to know about is, first is M&A, right? Mergers and acquisitions, the bread and butter, the sample of corporate law what it works on. Due diligence is something you should be thorough with. How it happens, what are the major principles, what are due diligence checklists, right? And then basics of private equity, arbitration, banking, project finance is the bare basics of this. Now, two books which are considered, let's say, the holy grail for understanding, the corporate world and what exactly works and how everything is being broken down into simple logical terms. One is Chris Stokes' Commercial Awareness, everything you need to know about commercial awareness. Second is Sales of Shares and Businesses by Andrew Stilton. Now, these two books are really important. They serve as a back study, so you get acquainted with all the concepts, and you know exactly how transactions take place, how closing takes place, how openings takes place, what is due diligence actually about, what does this process entail within itself, right? Then I think two other books which are helpful for M&A, would not suggest reading them completely, but a few things where you're confused. I think one is an M&A quick reference guide by McKenna, Long and Albridge, right? And the other is an M&A practitioner's guide, Stephen M. Bragg. Uh, these books are something which can be found online easily, right? You can find their ebooks. I was very grateful because I got a lot of these resources from my seniors, and they really set it clear in terms of what your foundational basics are. But the idea is just to get your foundational corporate law basics very much clear. You need to know right from how does the transaction open to what all happens in between to how it closes, what are the different conditions along the way, and due diligence, obligations, preferences, and what is on the checklist, what teams are involved. All of this needs to be covered. For a case study, I would strongly suggest go to the TCLA forum, read through, how should a sample case study be attempted, what are the procedures involved. But to give you a very basic idea, I think in one or two lines, is that for a case study, the most important thing is you need to remember that it's a role play. So you need to conduct yourself like a solicitor, right? You need to be calm, you need to be composed, and you need to ensure that the other person will ask a few questions in between. There will be a bit back and forth because they're trying to assess you, and second, they're a client, and clients will do that, right? So to be calm and composed, not get taken aback or started in the middle, and you should have clarity in terms of what you're saying, and it should be in a very organized form. The moment it is not organized, it becomes difficult for the listeners to follow. So clarity in terms of what you're stating, organization, and not being taken aback, let's say if you're disturbed while you're saying. One very good tip is to start with an executive summary, then ask if further explanation is needed. But again, would advise to check out the TCLA's summary in that. They do a really good job of explaining everything in detail there. So that I think should be sufficient for a brief idea into preparation.
So lastly, Laksh, reflecting on your journey, what advice would you like to give to students who are just starting their applications for the vacation schemes at top firms?
Right. So firstly, something which is extremely important is, and it is often understated because of massive peer pressure in law schools generally, is that there's a sense of heightened competition, and a lot of people are divided in terms of, okay, who would be applying for certain opportunities and who would not be applying. Like if this is my rank bracket, if this is what I'm doing, particular in terms of organizational skills, am I even eligible to apply for things like this? And something I've talked previously also in terms of prerequisites. So first thing is, understand what the opportunity is, what it entails, right? Why do you want to work at a city law firm, whichever one, or why do you want to work specifically? Let's say, what are your reasons for that specifically? You need to be very, very clear about it. Take your time with it, sit with yourself, understand those reasons thoroughly. Second, do you see yourself working in London? Do you see yourself, let's say, away from your country? What would that be like for you? Because there are practical ramifications attached to that also, which a lot often people don't talk about, right? And that is something which you also need to consider, right? So take to that process, and most importantly, do you like commercial law in the first place? That is obviously the most important thing. So if they're starting their journey, I'm assuming you like commercial law, but always like give it a thought. So having that clarity is the bare basics. That's your strong root over which you'll be building. Second, be organized, like damn organized in terms of what you are going to do, what is your timeline going to look like. I would say reaching out to people during this process is extremely important. I was very fortunate in that way, that I got to mm, help from so many different people, from seniors across different law schools, from a few working professionals also. But the only reason I got their help is because A, I had built some sort of connection with them earlier. B, I had asked them in advance. Let's say my vacation scheme deadline for an application is, uh, usually it happens in the period of May, June, July. Let's say my application deadline is the end of June. if whoever I want to review my application from, right, I will ask them at the start, or worst case before the mid of May. Probably earlier, but this is the worst case scenario. You want to ask people, because everyone has their own obligations, and checking an application takes a lot of time, right? So definitely have people backing you up. People who have done these things before, reach out to them. I think today there are a lot of different mentorship organizations also scattered, I think, like yours as well, right? And I think organizations which specifically work with people who are applying for vacation schemes. So uh, look into those organizations, see if it's helpful for you, and if you can derive something from it, if you can get a good mentor from there, go ahead, do it, because everything helps, because you can always learn from some experience or the other. So that, in terms of preparation, uh, that's very helpful. And most importantly, look at all variety of resources, right? When I started applying for a vacation scheme, the whole idea was, okay, how do I go about writing these answers? So TCL has solved that for me. But when I went through the forum, there are a lot of different small resources which I don't really have the time to cover, no, in a short interview. But once you do that process for yourself, you realize that there's so many different things across the internet, both through people and online, which you'll find, which can really help you aid this journey, right? uh, so that's there on the preparation part. On the, I would say, outlook front, I would say, don't treat it as a job opportunity. Why? Because in the end, like, you don't ever know how it's going to pan out. Obviously, that's one thing, but more because it's a very good learning experience, right? Because the process which we have, the entire fourth stage process, or three-stage process for these firms, leads you to a lot of introspection within what you have done in your law school or previously, right? What skills you have learned, and brings out a lot of confidence in your own self, right? And you can have a nice summary of your life up to this point. And the idea how you learn to write a lot of meaningful content, right, in a short word space. That's a skill, right, which you learn through this. So all of these skills you're learning will help you more than you think moving forward, whether you get the scheme or not. So treat it as an experience. And even if you're interested in commercial law, go for it. I personally can say, from my vacation scheme experience, it was, an amazing 3 weeks I had with the London office of Herbert Smith Freehills. Got to know so many different people from across the world, had wonderful interactions. And yeah, I would say, if you feel that I want something similar, go for it. Don't hesitate. Just be organized, have clarity, and be true. Never lie in your applications. Never. I've had this principle: never lie about anything. Never faff in your applications. The graduate recruitment teams catches it like anything.
Right,
But yeah, I think that's broadly it. Best of
right,
luck.
right. With this, I believe we have covered all the important things that we needed to know about the vacation scheme. Thank you so much for accommodating our request. I'm very positive this video will be of utmost help for everybody watching it. Once again, on behalf of YLCC, I thank you and I wish you the very best for your journey ahead. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nihal. Thank you. All right. Thank you.